All right, everybody, welcome to the first ever kind of DIY instructional Aquarius podcast video voiceover. So, what this is from the video, if you've seen the 210 removal, this is the video that basically shows me putting in a new rack where the 210 was. So, instead of having one gigantic 210-gallon tank, I installed the rack, got it all plumbed up, and now I've got 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 tanks there. So 11 tanks instead of one giant one. And as far as the focus of my fish room, definitely makes it aligns a little bit better with the focus of my fish room. So what in the world is going on here? First off, if you're gonna get motion sick, you might not want to watch this because it's gonna be a lot of just fast forwarding through this footage of me having a GoPro in my mouth, bringing you along for a point of view action of what I'm doing. And this is all completely unscripted, so hopefully I remember everything. Hopefully timing works out well as I do transitions and whatnot. So yeah, what you see here is me opening up a Gladiator rack. Hashtag unsponsored, hashtag, the official rack of the Aquarius Gladiator. You guys need to reach out and sponsor some YouTubers because your racks are awesome and a lot of people use your stuff. My fish room is almost entirely Gladiator, except for the 190-inch or so rack that unfortunately I had to get from Home Depot because Gladiator didn't make a 90. So what's happening now? I just took down that box. As I'm putting in this rack, there is going to be dead space in the corners where two racks meet. So right now, to the top left of the screen, I am actually going to assemble and put this, much smaller kind of wire rack that I got from Amazon. Black wire rack, and that's where my linear piston air pump from Gemco, it's going to sit on top of that guy, and then it's going to give me additional storage space. So in my fish room, storage is at a premium, space is at a premium, so I got to make do with what I can. And yeah, so initially what I was doing was setting up, I was getting ready to install the Gladiator rack, and then I realized, oh crap, I should probably install this Amazon rack for storage first, because it's going to make it pretty much impossible to get that thing in there unless I move my dehumidifier and all sorts of silly stuff like that. So yeah, the next few bits should be me getting this thing together. That guy in the corner there was the linear piston air pump, and feel free to pause, stop, go back, and yeah, if you see anything that you're like, what the heck is that thing? Just stop and pause and go back and take a look at it. What you'll see right now is again, I've got the GoPro in my mouth, point of view, and that black piping that's kind of knee level, that's actually my drain system. So it kind of goes all the way around the fish room and then drains out the side of the house. Yeah, so I'm just showing right now that it's 82 degrees in the fish room, 43% humidity. So having the dehumidifier pulling out the moisture definitely helps, so it's not an unbearable heat, but it's pretty warm. Yeah, so I think I'm working in a t-shirt and shorts. You'll see some, there you go. There's a shot of my feet and some flip-flops. That's good times right there. And then I'm adjusting the GoPro in my mouth, incredibly uncomfortable. I actually didn't have the true mouthpiece. I just had the mount like biting down to it in my mouth, spit drooling out of my mouth. It was just real good times. So, oh, there we go. There's one of the shots where I actually don't have the GoPro in my mouth. So I am just putting the rack together. It's good times. The blue tubing that you see hanging down, blue in my fish room indicates that it's a water line, so that's actually going up to the PVC up above. That 210-gallon tank, actually every wall in my fish room is on its own system, if you will, or its own water, what's the word I'm looking for here? Water automatic sprinkler controller. And so for the 210, I had 4 of the water lines going to it, and 4 is actually what I found for the little air/water valves I'm using from Gemco. 4 was the max. Any more than that, and it would actually be too much for the 3/4 inch elbow on the overflow drain to handle. So that was interesting learning that one, because I think I was running 6 at one time, and then I realized after running it for about 10-15 minutes that it was too much for the 3/4. So yeah, rack's almost, storage rack is almost done, getting these final little pieces on there. You can see the PVC up above my head, depending on the angle. Just putting that top shelf on. And yeah, this was, oh god, my garage is so messy here. It doesn't look like that anymore, folks, I can promise you that. Oh, little heavy hammer, tapping that bad boy in. and I tried to edit out a good amount of the nonsense, but I'm sure there's still some nonsense that's gonna remain. That black stuff right there, that's actually some cushiony kind of foam material that I'm using to, take in the vibration, reduce vibration from the linear piston air pump. Oh, right there. So that's my timer for my light system that just went off. So I had to open up the app and get that thing going, getting the air pump going again, and I'll eventually come back and cut that hose to shorten the length to the linear piston air pump. And now that I've got that rack in place, now I can go ahead and put the Gladiator in place. So as you can see, just kind of looking at this angle, that it would have made it really, really difficult had I installed that rack. I'd have to pull that dehumidifier out and then move and put that other rack in place, and that really wasn't something that I wanted to do. So now what the heck am I doing? Oh, I'm measuring. So I'm measuring heights. So I'm using 30 breeders and 15s from Aquarium Master, and the reason I chose those was to kind of maximize my gallons front to back without having 20 highs, really tall tanks. You may see it in some of these shots or not, but there's basically a beam that runs through this room up above, and so that basically takes out about a foot of space that I have. So this particular rack is height constrained, so I'm measuring to make sure that where I put my racks, where I put my shelves, that I'll have enough clearance for the overflow drain to go into that pipe, and you'll see a little bit later how I do that, and not have it be a complete disaster after I get the racks all installed and put all the pieces in place, put the plywood in place that the tanks sit on, and then put a tank on there and find out that it's too high or it's too short. That would not be fun. So that's giving you kind of a look of how it's coming together. Measuring twice, 3 times, 4 times. Doing a lot of measuring. Don't want to mess it up. A little moment of silence. And so there I am. I'm putting in the next level. So this is actually 3 levels on this shelf. Most of my tanks, or I think, all of my racks are 3 tiers. I'm not advanced enough in age yet where I'm not afraid to climb up onto a ladder or bend down low to service low tanks. I know there's you watch a lot of fish room videos of the guys that have been doing this for 20, 30 years, and that's one of their chief complaints is they don't their knees are blown out. They don't want to bend down low. I'm not at that point yet, so I can have a lower tank. And that's kind of showing that beam that I was talking about. So again, there we go. Yep, and there I'm measuring it. Definitely space constrained, height constrained right there. So I want to make sure that I install this correctly, and I don't want to have to go back and adjust this stuff because it's just a pain in the butt. And then I'm just going to put in the cross bars, cross sections, if you will, for the back. So I still have access. I can walk in, and I don't have them in the front to trip over anything. That little white thing up above was a vent. Oh, here we go. This refreshment break is brought to you by Gatorade. I think that was Blue Arctic Crush that I was drinking. Tasty. And now we're moving on to the plumbing for the drain lines. And what I'm doing is using 2-inch ABS. I've measured out, I think this is going to be for the second row. So the very bottom row already is going to tap into that initial main drain that's running around my fish room. And that one right there, so I had a T-elbow I knew better than to put that black glue where it could fall on my dehumidifier. So there's a T there. Cut a piece of pipe the specific length. That's now installed. Now I'm putting an elbow on there. And then that, as you'll see when I do my next cut, so I'm doing some measuring. That's going to run that horizontal length, but I'm going to have it at an angle so it drains. And that's going to be for that mid-level, and it's actually going to be for the top level as well. On all the other 3 racks in my fish room, I have 3 horizontal drains basically. So one for the top that snakes its way down, connects with the middle, snakes its way down, and then goes to the very bottom main drain line. This one, I just did 2. So I just added that one at the mid-level, and then the top and middle rows will drain into that guy, and you will see more of that. And so I'm actually going to cap off that end after I get a nice angle on it. Got some black ABS glue on my fingers. Sweet. Using a Eheim long grabby pole thing to keep it propped up at an angle. and then my fish room is held together with zip ties. So there we go. I think I give it a little spin. Oh yeah, good job, Randy. Way to have the glue on your dehumidifier. That's a smart move. Hold it for a couple seconds. Cinch down those zip ties, and there you go. You see that nice, real aggressive slope. That's way more than I need, but just to be on the safe side, might as well put an aggressive slope in there to make sure all the water drains out. And so I'm not going to put one up at the top. If I was going to, I would have done a T where I put that elbow in, or I would have snaked it, did another elbow, and ran it up the other way to have another horizontal going all the way across the top. But on this one, I was lazy. I just wanted to stop really doing construction in the fish room. And now, this is drain line elbow construction. So we've got those blue barbs there. So those are going to screw into those elbows. Now, each one of those is actually going to go into the back of the bulkhead on the tanks. They're all 3/4 inch. I'm using PVC glue, and those are actually like little 59-cent. Let me click over and actually look at, I pulled it up, 3/4 inch polypropylene blue twister insert times MPT. I think technically the threads are not the same for the PVC and what I'm those blue barbs, but with the PVC glue, you just tighten it up, ram it on home, and then the PVC glue, they both melt together, and we're happy. And I haven't had any issue. Now I bring that up that they're 59 cents because the other ones that I used for most other tanks, I use these Everbuilt hose barb adapters, 3/4 inch to 3/4 inch, and those are found at Home Depot. And these suckers are like $4, so they're kind of a opaquish, whitish, clear color. That's what I thought all was available that would actually hook up to these 3/4 inch PVC elbows that were threaded. And come to find out, I was wrong. I just went a little bit farther down the plumbing aisle, found those things, and they work. So you're able to get so many more. Was it like 10 for the price of one or something, some nonsense like that? So if that's if you're gonna get anything from this video and you're doing an overflow or a return or a drain line, system like this with bulkhead, spring for these guys. They work just fine. And what I'll connect to the end of those it's actually gonna be Python tubing. I think the Python tubing is 5/8, if my memory serves me correct. I could be wrong. And now I'm just kind of lining stuff up, cleaning things up, getting it all organized. There is the bulkhead, and so now I'm going to do some test fitting to see what length I need to cut of PVC that's going to make sure I've got enough PVC into the bulkhead and then enough PVC into the that 90-degree elbow. So, there's nothing precise about this. I'm not a plumber. I just play one on daytime TV. So I'm just kind of taking a decent swag at, all right, yeah, that's see, I do a test fit, jam it in there. Yeah, that's good enough. Yep. So now that I feel like that is good, I'm going to try to pull that out. I think I just say screw and I leave it in there. Let's see what happens. Let's see if I'm strong enough to actually move it out. Adjusting the GoPro. Ooh, is this actually one where I don't have it on fast forward? All right. So I say screw it, and then I just start kind of estimating. And then I'll go through and cut a bunch of those. Yep, pop that in there. Enough of that looks like it's sticking out. Good to go. And then I just proceed to do that and make a bunch more of these. Yeah, so what I thought was correct, and I didn't actually have this one on fast forward, so now, zoom, now we're fast forwarding. All right, so I stopped my audio recording, the voiceover, and now we're going super fast mode. And I'm just going to go ahead and cut, what am I doing, like 14 of these, 15 of these? I don't know, it's late right now that I'm doing this voiceover. But yeah, cut, get those all lined up, try to do things, all of it, the whole batch in kind of one step, and try not to forget things. I believe this next step is going to be me actually securing the pieces together with PVC glue. Yep, you can see that. I think this might actually be a different day, so I'm actually wearing shoes this time instead of just flip flops. So I think I did this over 2 or 3 nights, but it's been months now. It's been months and months that this video footage has been sitting on my phone or my computer, and I just haven't gotten around to doing the voiceover. Because honestly, I was concerned it was just gonna suck. And if you've made it this far, like, kudos to you. We're 15 minutes into this thing and you're still hanging out? Yeah, so I guess a little bit more background is I hope that this is providing a very in-depth look at what it takes, at least in my fish room, to install a... What the heck am I doing here? What am I doing? Oh, I think I glued it on one end, and then I'm using it to dry, and then I'm going to pull it out of the other end, the one that I test fitted. I think that's what the heck I did there with that crazy thing. Yeah, so there's a lot of videos out there of people talking about kind of what they've done, or maybe they'll show you like one tank being installed with a fast forward here or there. But I felt like doing actual POV would give you a much more in-depth view, a much more intimate view of... Yeah, there we go. See, I used it to get the PVC out. Sweet. And then I think I'm gonna... Yeah, and then once that dries, I'll just pull it off the bulkhead, because that's not how you're gonna install it on the tank. What are we doing here? This is a shout out to Master Breeder Dean. So in one of his videos where he was actually drilling into PVC, he used like a table to draw a straight line on PVC. And before I'd done this or seen Dean do that, my PVC drilling was terrible. It was just all over the place. And this is actually corner wood trim that I had left over from a project. And Dean sparked the idea that I should just take that piece of corner mold and use that as my ruler, basically. And so you've got the corner mold, so it's going to grip the PVC real well, and then boom, you get that nice straight line. And so this now is that's the end of the water line, right? So it's a new water inlet line, and now I've gone and made a line, and I'm adding 10, 12, or however many it is, new valves to that. So instead of just having the 4 or 5, whatever it was, I'm now going to run, way more than that, so I can actually add these tanks. And the 30 breeders are going to get 2 lines in as opposed to just 1 for a 15, because they're all going to run on the same timer. But since they're bigger tanks, they're likely going to have more fish in them. I'm going to want more water turnover. So the thing to do is just add more water lines in, and that's why the 210 gallon had 4 separate lines, because of the limitation of the individual little air valves / water valves that I'm using. Shout out to Gemco. You can find them there. And so there's the 4 existing ones. Yep. And now I'm moving that silly shop light that's kind of bonking me in the head. And that metal tube, that dryer ducting tube, that's actually my air vent leading out. I initially had that hooked up with a humidity detector, but I found that just wasn't kicking on. And so now I really just turn that thing on when I'm using, I don't know, some type of ABS glue or PVC glue. I run it in there to vent the fish room. Or sometimes in the summertime, if it's really, really hot, I'll turn that on to just get some more air circulation. So now I've got my drill bit in there, and now I'm going to drill. I think I've done an inch and a half space between the water lines, the water valves, and now I'm just going to drill. This particular line hadn't been run in probably a month or so, but there was still some residual water in there, so a little bit of water comes out, and I tried to make sure not to get any PVC shavings actually into the tube, because that would then clog, or highly likely clog, the valves. So I didn't want to mess with any of that. There's a nice little Denolate towel. You can pick that up at Aquarium Co-op. That's a fantastic towel. Looks really good. And so first you do your drill, right? So you get your hole, and then you get the threading drill bit. Both of those are sold by Gemco. They really spell it out when you're looking at this stuff to buy. Very crappy that I don't have the GoPro pointed up. But what I'm doing right now is I'm actually threading each of those holes. I'm going very slow, which is hard for me to do because I'm not the best at building stuff, but I'm taking my time, going slow, threading it, threading those holes so that I can actually install those water valves. And those water valves are kind of barbed outlet on one end, and then the other end that you actually put into the PVC line is threaded. And so there's plumber's tape in my hand. There's me counting out the water valves. And then that bag, those are bulkheads. I think I bought those on Amazon, maybe? No. Why would it come like that? Maybe it was eBay that I bought those bulkheads. I'm not sure. So yeah, that's like 20 bulkheads. I'm only going to need 14 or 15 of them or whatever. No, maybe I stuffed... actually, no, maybe that was all from Gemco. And then I had stuffed some air, the water valves in there. So then the next move is I'm coming out here, I'm coming out to my board, and I'm going to cut plumber's tape with that utility knife. And be careful, that utility knife is super sharp. I've jacked myself up pretty good a couple times. Oh, there I am, popping that extra piece of PVC out of the overflow. So I think those are still drying, and I use so much PVC glue that some of it was leaking out. So now I'm kind of tipping it up so it doesn't leak out the other end. But now I'm going to start cutting and preparing pieces of this plumber's tape. And I'm using that wood to cut. And so what I've found is that you only need half of the width of those pieces of plumber's tape. So I've got 4 pieces, 5 pieces, and that's effectively 10. So you're seeing me here, I'm cutting it down the middle and just pulls apart super easy because those water valves, the threads there's not many threads there, not so much that you would need the full width, and it just kind of gets, just gets a little clunky, and you don't want to cover the actual hole that the water is going to travel out of with the plumber's tape. So there's a little bit of precision to it, but not much. And then as far as the wrapping of those goes, I can't remember what it is, but I think you wrap, let's see, you hold it, and then this kind of gets to be a pain in the butt because it wants to slip until you get that first kind of initial wrap going. So you twist it away from you, and then it all wraps up, and that's that story. So then there's those guys that are all wrapped on that one end. And now what I'm doing is I'm using metallic Sharpie and I'm pretty sure this is another Dean trick. Again, if you've seen my fish room tour that Corey shot, I basically call it a crappy version of Dean's fish room, but why do I need to go through the trial and error when he's already done that for 30, 40 years or however long it's been? And he's consulted with all of his old fish buddies that collectively it's like, I don't know, a century, what is it, like a 1,000 years of collective fish room experience probably that they've all leveraged to make their own fish rooms. And so what that Sharpie, metallic Sharpie does is I'm highlighting the arrow on top, and then where the arrow terminates, I'm doing that vertical line down the knob. So depending on the angle I'm looking at it, there we go. See, I'm doing it right there. I can see where the arrow is pointing, and that arrow is going to tell you it's either open or close. And so these are all little things that you take the extra 2 seconds to do this while you're putting it all in, and it's going to pay dividends because you're not up in the fish room. You don't need a flashlight. Like this water line is kind of pushed back. There's no direct lighting on it, and you're like, what am I looking at? Is this one on? Is this tank on? Is it off? I don't know. But if you've got that silver metallic there, you actually can see it, and it just makes things 100 times easier. And now, there we go. Get your head up, Randy. Show the people the footage. So now I'm just screwing those in, and you don't want to screw in too tight. It's maybe 5, 6, 7 revolutions. I'm not sure how many going clockwise. Just enough to get it in there, but you don't want to go too tight because you don't want it to go past the threads. And I think from what I've read is, that's actually what leads to those things leaking as well. And so I'm just installing the armada here of outlet valves, of water outlet valves for this rack. Because fish like auto water changes. They like clean water every day. And so what I do is every single day, each rack gets 20 minutes of runtime, 20 or 25 minutes, something like that. And then I'm actually going to do a little bit of an upgrade that I'll film a video of to kind of improve the auto water change system, or at least make my life a little bit easier. What am I doing here? Oh, I think I forgot to thread one. Yeah. So yeah, I forgot to thread one of the holes. So I have to get that going, and there we go. And if you've made it this far, I'm going to share with you that I am drinking some scotch right now. It's about 9:16, which for a dude with a 3-year-old and a 10-year-old, this is super late. This is like damn near 2:30 in the morning for me. So yeah, 9:16, having a little scotch while I do a voiceover. Now, those are pieces of Python tubing. Python tubing is by far the most flexible, the best, the easiest to work with. I love this stuff. So this is like a 50-foot hose that I wasn't using, hacked it up to get these pieces. And so now I'm using Corey's method, and some other people do this, of actually putting the tubing, the drain line tubing, on those blue barbs. And so what you do is you just use boiling water, you heat it up, and once it's pliable, you can then put it on the end of the barb. Well, before you can put it on the end of the barb, you need to stretch it out a little bit because this is actually 5/8 diameter going onto 3/4 inch, a 3/4 inch barb. And so basically what that does is, you get a super tight fit that's pretty much never going to come off, and you don't need to run a clamp. But you have some more prep work, right? If I just use a straight 3/4 inch tubing to 3/4 inch that, I would still need a mechanical clamp to make sure that I had the extra security that it wasn't going to slip off at some point, and then have 20 minutes of water change for a tank just drain. And so right now I'm using just my electrical, snips or whatever they are. They're not, snips is a bad term. But my electrical pliers. You can use needle nose would be the other choice too. These are practically needle nose pliers. And so I stretch it out, in one direction, and then I'll turn it kind of 180 degrees or 90 degrees, and then I'll stretch it out the other way. So I get it nice and loose, nice and pliable, and then I slide it on. And then once it cools, which it cools very quickly, it just grips it super tight. And, running the fish room for a year and a half now, I haven't had a single one of these fail. And you got to get it really high up. You got to get it like 3 or 4, or ideally the entire barb up on that tube. And it's going to be super secure. And the other thing you want to do is the tubing is going to have a natural bend to it. You want to try to visualize, and that heavy salad bowl that's keeping those stupid tubes in the hot water, because that was getting a little annoying. But back to the tubing, you want to position the tubing such that when you install that whole assembly on the bulkhead on the back of the tank, it's kind of pointing in the general direction that you're going to drain out of, right? So if you shout out, there's my Yeti Aquarium Co-op mug. That was one of my first acquisitions that I just had to make when I joined the co-op team. That thing was just too sweet not to make. And my goodness, does it keep coffee hot for a long time. But yeah, you don't want to, if your drain is running to the right, and you're going to inherently position this thing kind of angled and to the right, you don't want your hose kind of bending in the opposite direction. You want the hose to flow in the direction, and that's kind of what I'm doing there. I know they're going to go down and to the right, so I'm making sure that the tubing can naturally flow down and to the right and not kink. So that is something that can happen with this, is depending on your positioning, you may, kind of kink the hose a little bit. There's a couple in my fish room that do have slight kinks in them, but it doesn't, it has never not been able to handle the flow of water leaving the tank during an auto water change. So last one, and then, I did more than this. And then, like on the second to last one, if you're doing one at a time, like onesie twosie, it's not bad. But if you're doing like 12, it gets to be like you're really cranking on your hands. You're really cranking on your wrists. Use cooking spray. The friend of the podcast, Hi from UFA, he was talking about using like a Crisco spray as you're applying a background to a tank, one of the vinyl backgrounds, and then you kind of squeegee credit card out the bubbles, and the same thing, like you can use cooking spray on those barbs, and it makes that tubing, you still need to stretch the tubing out a little bit, not nearly as much, but it just slides on like it's been greased, and I wish I would have done that from the beginning. That would have been nice. Would have saved the skin on my hands a little bit. So now I've got all my tanks from inside, and actually, you've probably seen if you haven't, you'll watch the video of me drilling these tanks and talking about my painting process, or more slopping paint on. But these are those tanks. So again, this has been a long time in the making. This is like months and months ago that I did this. But now I'm screwing on the bulkheads to the backs of the tank, which are painted and drilled. So we just go through and install these bulkheads, unscrew, make sure the little rubber gasket is on the inside of the tank, screw it on there. And another great thing of stepping up to a 15 or a 20 compared to a 10 is that you get thicker glass. You might have heard Dean and I talk about, 10s, and how, if you're going to use 10s in your fish room and you're drilling overflows, you're drilling in bulkheads, budget like an extra $30 during the $1 a gallon sale for 3 more tanks, because you're probably going to break at least 3. I was cocky and I broke 6. So not all were just straight from drilling. But when you start installing these bulkheads and you start cranking on them, making them tight, and you start installing the actual elbows with the return for the drain lines, if you're cranking it a little bit too much, that 10 gallon glass is so thin that it can break. But when they step you up to a 15 and a 20, they're inherently using thicker glass, so it's far more forgiving. I didn't break a single one of the 15s, and not that I was being careful, but just very, very reassuring having that. And so now what I'm doing is I'm putting in that front front horizontal support, putting in the Gladiator crossway supports, whatever they called. I'm not a structural engineer, so excuse me. And then so the wire rack goes on, which technically probably don't even need to use the wire deck. But then here is my painted on both sides black Rust-Oleum enamel 3/4 inch plywood. And there's a little bit of a bow, so you have to kind of account for that. But once you get your tanks on there, it will inherently flatten out. Hope people haven't passed out from how quick this is all moving. Luckily, I don't have any strobe lights or anything. So yeah, there's me kind of test fitting one of the tanks, and so you'll see that's an extra long tube because again, I'm draining the top row down into that middle section right there. And so there you go. See, so I've measured that out well enough that I've got a couple inches to play with, and I can kind of move that drain line back and forth a little bit if I want to. But I'm very happy with that, and now I'm just going to go through and actually that blue paper towel is going in there. So when I use PVC glue, any sloppiness, any dripped residuals that are going down, I could have done this on the side, but I think there's a reason why I choose to do it like this. But yeah, so applying the PVC glue, sticking it in the bulkhead, getting that nice secure fit, holding it down for a couple seconds, and then anything that drips that's residual, it's going to get caught by that paper towel. And I probably could have used cheaper paper towel for that, but hey, it's what I had on hand and didn't feel like searching for my regular kitchen paper towel. Now, I will say one thing that I do regret. On my very first tanks, I did paint the bottoms black as well. And for this rack, I didn't paint the bottoms. Actually, for a couple of the racks, I didn't paint the bottoms because all of my racks, I do run that black 3/4 inch plywood. And so I was just assuming that, oh, yeah, it's fine. I've got the black plywood there. I don't need to worry about it. The fish aren't going to be able to, they're not going to get too much reflection or anything. But just as I've been working in the fish room lately, I've noticed that my tanks that are painted black on the bottom, they look 20 times better. They really do. And so I think what I'm going to do is, as I breed bristlenose, as I breed angelfish, as I breed discus, whatever it is, as I, empty a tank, I think I'm just going to completely overhaul, remove that tank, paint the bottom, and then put it back on the rack. And so right now I'm test fitting. So you see how tight that fit was from where the return line is against the wall. And so I'm kind of shimmying this Gladiator rack away from the wall to compensate for that. Because that's one other place where you can where I did break a 10 was banging against the wall a little too hard during installation. So I think this is after breaking four 10-gallon tanks. I finally get the bulkhead in. I don't break it. I cut myself. Yeah, that's a Nemo Band-Aid. I get it in there, and then as I push it onto the rack, bam, I pushed it a little too hard against the wall. And so right now what I'm doing is on that drain line, I'm just notching that drain line at the very end. So there's no way that it could possibly form any type of suction or, get fully flush and stuck against the drain, the actual main drain line, that 2-inch black ABS. So that kind of gives me that extra layer, that extra security that that's not going to happen. And so now I've already drilled 2 or 1 of the drain lines into the 2-inch ABS. I'm using my trusty Diablo carbide hole cutter. I think it's maybe it is 3/4 inch holes, and so I'm just plumbing directly into that, and I'm leaving at least 2 inches of that Python tubing, that Python drain line in the ABS. So you basically have to lift the entire tank out or really pull that tubing out with some gusto to actually get that to come out of the drain line. So it's not like it's just barely hanging in there. Again, we're talking about water, in my house. Granted, this is a room I built in my garage that naturally drains away from the house, but I don't want to chance it. And now what you're seeing is I'm taking some time showing you, yep, there's the drain lines. And then we kind of pan back, give you a chance to take a look at the other drain lines. And now here it is. Here's actually months and months later. This is what the rack looks like. So there's the 515s on top. You can see the various air lines, blue water lines, and whatnot behind. There's that middle rack with a 30 breeder and 215. So again, getting those shorter height tanks so I could still have some room to work with in terms of my arms and fish out. And then the bottom row also has the same setup: 30 breeder, 215s, and then plenty of height underneath for storage. So I hope everybody liked this. I hope you got some good insight into what the heck it's like to install a rack kind of from start to finish in the fish room. Plumbing, I already had the airline going, so I didn't really have to show you too much of that. But yeah, hope you liked it. This is a completely new style video for me. Hope it was, educational, informative, all that good stuff.